Success is not something you stumble into. It is something you build with intention, with structure, with clarity so sharp it cuts through fear, distraction, doubt, and excuses, because without clarity, your life becomes noise, and without a plan, your effort becomes waste. And right now, I want you to feel the weight of this truth in your body, not as pressure, but as power, because the moment you truly understand that success is engineered, not wished for, everything inside you begins to shift. Most people think success comes from luck, timing, talent, or connections, but that is the story they tell themselves to escape responsibility, because the real truth is more demanding and more empowering at the same time. Success comes from clarity about what you want, structure in how you pursue it, and relentless follow-through when motivation fades, because motivation is unreliable, but structure is loyal. And life does not reward emotional intensity alone. It rewards consistent, directed action. You can have all the passion in the world, but if that passion has no direction, it becomes frustration. You can have all the energy in the world, but if that energy is scattered, it becomes exhaustion. You can have all the ambition in the world, but if that ambition is not anchored to a plan, it becomes anxiety, because the human nervous system is not designed for chaos. It is designed for progress, and progress only happens when there is a target, a strategy, and a rhythm of execution. Clarity is the foundation of all momentum. When you know exactly what you want, your brain starts working for you instead of against you. It begins filtering opportunities, spotting patterns, eliminating distractions, and reallocating energy toward what matters most. But when you are unclear, everything feels heavy, every decision drains you, every obstacle feels bigger than it is, and every delay feels like failure instead of feedback. Most people wake up and react to life instead of creating it. They check messages before they check their mission. They let urgency override importance. They let other people's expectations shape their priorities, and then they wonder why they feel stuck, overwhelmed, and behind. It is because motion without direction does not create progress. It creates fatigue, and fatigue slowly turns into frustration, and frustration slowly turns into resignation. You can work endlessly and still feel empty if your work is not aligned with a clear outcome. You can be busy all day and still move nowhere if your activity is not aimed at a defined destination. Because movement alone is not progress. Progress is movement in a meaningful direction, and that direction only comes from conscious planning. A plan is not a limitation. It is liberation. It frees your mind from constant indecision. It frees your emotions from constant chaos. It frees your energy from constant leakage. Because when you have a plan, you no longer have to argue with yourself every day about what to do. You already decided. And that decision becomes your anchor when emotions rise and fall. Without a plan, your life is driven by moods. And moods are unpredictable. One day you feel inspired. The next day you feel defeated. One day you feel confident. The next day you feel afraid. And if your actions depend on how you feel, your results will always be unstable. But when your actions are driven by a plan, your identity stabilizes because you act from commitment, not emotion. A plan turns fear into a signal instead of a stop sign. When you know where you are going, fear does not disappear, but it loses its authority. It becomes information instead of a command, and you start asking better questions. Not how do I avoid this, but how do I move through this? Not why is this happening to me, but how is this shaping me for what I want? You see, fear thrives in ambiguity. Fear grows in uncertainty. Fear multiplies in vagueness, but clarity shrinks fear. Structure contains fear, and execution dissolves fear, because the mind cannot stay terrified when the body is in motion toward a meaningful goal. Most people are not afraid of failure. They are afraid of being exposed as directionless. They are afraid of committing to something and discovering who they really are through the process, because commitment forces you to confront your standards, your discipline, your integrity, your follow-through. And many people would rather stay comfortable in indecision than be tested by execution. But the truth is, the moment you create a real plan, you step into a new identity, you stop being a drifter and you become a designer, you stop being a reactor and you become a creator, you stop being a consumer of circumstances, and you become an architect of outcomes. A plan does not guarantee success, but it guarantees growth. And growth is the only path to success, because without growth, you stagnate. And stagnation slowly suffocates the human spirit, People do not burn out from doing too much meaningful work. They burn out from doing too much meaningless work. When your effort is connected to a clear destination, even exhaustion feels purposeful. Even struggle feels like training. Even setbacks feel like calibration. But when your effort has no destination, exhaustion feels less pointless. Struggle feels unfair, and setbacks feel like proof that something is wrong with you. This is why motion without direction is so dangerous. It tricks you into believing you are advancing when you are merely consuming energy. It gives you the illusion of productivity without the reward of progress. It makes you feel busy instead of effective and tired instead of fulfilled. You can run faster and still be lost. You can climb higher and still be on the wrong wall. You can grind harder and still feel empty if you're not grounded in a clear plan that reflects who you want to become and what you want to contribute. A plan is not just about achievement. It is about alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions, between your vision and your daily behavior, between your potential and your performance. Without that alignment, even success can feel hollow. And with that alignment, even struggle feels meaningful. The human brain is a goal-seeking machine. It needs targets to organize itself. It needs structure to focus itself. It needs direction to regulate emotion. When you deprive your brain of a clear target, it defaults to survival mode. And survival mode is reactive, emotional, short-term, and defensive. But when you give your brain a meaningful target and a structured path, it shifts into growth mode. And growth mode is creative, strategic, long-term, and resilient. In growth mode, problems become puzzles instead of threats. Challenges become invitations instead of barriers. This is why clarity changes everything. Clarity changes how you interpret pain, how you interpret delay, how you interpret effort. Because clarity gives suffering a purpose. And suffering without purpose feels like punishment, but suffering with purpose feels like preparation. A plan also exposes your relationship with discipline. Many people say they want success, but what they really want is the feeling of success without the discipline that builds it. They want the reward without the repetition, the breakthrough without the boredom, the confidence without the consistency. But discipline is the price of self-respect, and structure is the framework that allows discipline to exist. When you have no plan, discipline feels harsh and unnecessary. When you have a plan, discipline feels essential and empowering, because every disciplined act becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every small execution becomes evidence of your identity. You do not become confident by waiting to feel confident. You become confident by keeping promises to yourself through consistent action, and those promises are created by your plan. A plan does not remove uncertainty from life, but it gives you something steady to return to when uncertainty rises. It gives you a reference point when doubt attacks. It gives you a compass when the terrain becomes confusing. And this is where most people quit. Not because the goal is impossible, but because the process becomes uncomfortable, repetitive, slow, and lonely. And without a clear plan, they interpret that discomfort as a sign to stop. But with a clear plan, they interpret it as part of the path. When your direction is weak, obstacles feel personal. But when your direction is strong, obstacles feel procedural. Just another step in the process, not a verdict on your worth. You are not tired because you are doing too much. You are tired because you are doing too little of what truly matters. You are not overwhelmed because life is too hard. You are overwhelmed because your energy is scattered instead of concentrated. And concentration only comes from clarity and structure. A focused life feels lighter than a distracted life, even when it is more demanding, because focus organizes effort while distraction fractures. Every great outcome is the result of small planned actions executed with persistence. Greatness is not an explosion. It is an accumulation. An accumulation requires tracking, refining, adjusting, recommitting, and continuing long after the excitement fades. Without a plan, people chase motivation, and motivation comes and goes like weather. But with a plan, people build momentum, and momentum feeds itself. One completed action strengthens belief. One strengthened belief fuels the next action, and the cycle compounds. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And a plan is the beginning of a system. It is the seed from which all structure grows. This is why some people work for years and feel stuck, and others work for months and feel transformed. The difference is not effort, it is direction. One is pushing against resistance with no map. The other is navigating resistance with intention. A clear plan gives you leverage over your emotions. When frustration appears, you return to your structure. When doubt appears, you return to your structure. When boredom appears, you return to your structure, because the structure does not care how you feel. It only cares that you show up. And every time you show up, even imperfectly, you reinforce the identity of a person who follows through. And identity is destiny in motion. When your life is built on reactions, your future feels fragile. When your life is built on a plan, your future feels intentional, because you are no longer waiting to be chosen by circumstances. You are choosing yourself through your actions. Most people underestimate how much power there is in a simple, clear plan executed daily. They think transformation must be dramatic. But the most powerful shifts are quiet, consistent, and cumulative. The compounding of small, disciplined actions over time. A plan is the bridge between vision and reality. Without it, vision remains fantasy. And without vision, action becomes drudgery. But when vision and plan are united, action becomes purpose and motion. You were not built to drift. You were built to direct. You were not built to merely survive. You were built to design. And every time you choose clarity over comfort, structure over chaos, direction over distraction, you reclaim your authorship. The life you want does not come from wishing harder. It comes from planning better. And planning better is not about control. It is about commitment to your highest self in a world full of noise, temptation, and distraction. When you build your life on a clear plan, you stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop outsourcing your future to chance. You stop waiting for permission to take yourself seriously, because structure is how seriousness becomes visible in behavior. And in the end, success does not belong to the most emotional, the most dramatic, or the most intense. It belongs to the most directed, the most structured, and the most consistent in translating intention into action over time.